Hello everyone, and welcome to this session about the cloud hosting of Pure and what you can expect. So this is one of the longer sessions, so you are more than welcome to ask questions during the session, because otherwise you might have forgotten them or they'd be out of context. Yeah, I might say that I'll cover it later, of course. So very briefly, what the agenda is, I'm first going to talk about why we, but also you, want to move to the cloud hosting and what the benefits are. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the steps we have doing so far and what we are currently doing. Then I'm talking about how the actual migration process is when you decide to move to cloud hosting. Then I have a short break together with Thiago, where I'll ask him some questions about how it was to actually migrate to cloud hosting. Finally, I'm going to cover how the future is and what we plan to do and how that impacts you in a good way. So first, just a little bit about myself. My name is Henrik Kragh-Hansen. I am Director of Software Engineering for Pure, which basically means that I'm responsible for all technology, so all developers working on Pure. So you can say the product team, they are responsible for defining what we are going to do with Pure. I'm responsible for making sure that we actually do it. And we are going to have an audience poll today, so you can find out your phones and then have the questions. So the thing is, what I would like to know is how many of you are currently hosted, and the options available are on-prem. And when I say on-prem, that basically means that you are not hosted by us. So even if you yourself are hosting in the cloud, we still consider you on-prem. The standard hosting is the where you are automatically updated, and the dedicated hosting is where you can decide when to update. So please vote. So a lot of you guys are on-prem. So that's perfect. Yeah, because then my job here is to then convince you why it's of course the best thing in the world to move to hosted. And ideally, I want everyone to be standard hosted, but dedicated is often the choice people do when they make the transition. But I'll also come into why standard hosting has some additional benefits. So why cloud hosting? So why do you actually want Pure to be cloud hosted? Is once we have a cloud solution for Pure, we as developers are able to develop Pure much faster. And it's faster for us to test, it's faster for us to roll out. And the thing is, as part of a cloud solution, instead of having the current solution where Pure is one gigantic application, then we want to separate it into smaller parts. So for example, the reporting module. That is, most of you have probably tried, if you're doing some intensive reporting, that can actually impact the performance of the other users you have in Pure. And we want to avoid that. So we can separate the reporting module so it can scale up and down. So it has the resources needed to perform the actions you need, and it doesn't impact the daily use of Pure. Similarly, we want to do that with more parts of Pure, but this is just one of the kind of extreme examples. We want also to expand on the functionality or the flexibility in the regards to us being able to offer different versions of, not versions, but parts of Pure. So you only get what you actually need for Pure, and you only pay for what you actually need for Pure. So if you don't need the entire portfolio of what Pure has of great things to offer, then we can tailor it more towards what you actually need, and we can adjust our infrastructure accordingly. Yeah. And another thing is that, and that is what we now call the standard hosting, is the thing we want everyone to be on, because in that, you will always be on the latest version, you will always have the latest security updates, but you might not be ready to roll out some of the new features we are introducing. And as part of that, we have already started on that, but we want to keep doing so you can then opt in to use the certain features. So instead of you being forced to, now you have this feature, then you say, okay, now we are ready to actually adopt this feature. And when you are doing that, then you can have your, if you need to adjust your internal processes, you may need to do some training for your own Pure people. So in other words, why would we move to the cloud? In general, the world as a whole is moving more towards cloud. A lot of more options are available. One of the examples is we are, as you all know, right now we're using Jira and Confluence. They are stopping supporting on-prem versions of Jira and Confluence. So that is a cloud-only solution. And as part of that, we internally have moved to all the development part of Pure. We moved to a cloud version of Pure, and the customer facing that is Morten mentioned that we are moving to Salesforce and other solutions there. Another thing is, once we are truly cloud native, we can make sure that we can update Pure without any downtime. So we don't need any scheduling of when are we actually doing this upgrade. And we can also improve the uptime of Pure. Right now, on our hosted solution, we already offer an SLA of 99.5. In reality, it's more around the 99.9. But in a true cloud native solution, we can have even better uptime. And one of the other benefits of being hosted by us is that we take care of all the security, so you're less likely to be attacked by ransomware attacks. And of course, in the end, if we have a cloud-only Pure, we can use some of the cloud-only offerings available to us, so we can make a better experience for you guys. It's actually also more convenient for you guys. Not necessarily you sitting here, but indirectly it is, because you probably have a DevOps team or something at your university who is actually doing the upgrades of Pure. And let's face it, Pure is not their primary focus. That is something they do when you tell them to do. Where for us, we have a whole squad of doing nothing but maintaining Pure and installing Pure. So they know exactly how Pure is working, how Pure is operating, how they can make sure that they have the best uptime. Whenever we are changing things in the infrastructure of Pure, so the requirements for Pure, then they are the first to know, they adapt accordingly, they optimize their processes to always improve and automate everything they can do. And in the rare scenario where something goes wrong, they also have direct communication to my team, so all the developers, to help. Okay, what can we do here? Where on-prem, then there is naturally a little bit of latency. It's actually also affordable, because if you have a subscription model for Pure and you want the standard hosting, then it's actually included in your fee, so basically free of charge. Of course, if you want a staging Pure also, then we charge something for that. Another very important aspect for us, that is actually the security. So here I have listed a lot of things. I'm going to go into details about some of them and some of the additional slides. But we do a lot of things in Elsevier as a whole, but also specifically at the Pure team. So every single developer, but also not even developers, but but people who somehow has impact on Pure and how it's driven, how it's being run. They go through intensive security awareness training, so they know what they need to be aware of when they're doing development, what they need to do. We have a lot of toolings running to scan Pure, to check for out of date libraries, to make sure they are updated. If any vulnerabilities are found in anything within our infrastructure, we are notified, we will update. So we try to run on the latest software and the latest services as possible. And of course, we have a strong focus on data security. So even though you are a cloud-hosted solution, your data is separated and it is being controlled. So it's only those who need access who can gain access. And if we, as a developer, needs access to the data to be able to reproduce certain bugs, we cannot even access it. We need to request you guys for permission, just like we have the same when it's on-premise, that we then ask, is it okay that we can take that because we cannot reproduce it, and then we can get access. And another thing here is, I've also mentioned the third parties. So we, of course, work together with third parties. We have the subcontractor list, but they don't have access. Other parts of Elsevier don't have access. Those people having access to the Pure instances are only those actually working on Pure. So we have a lot of policies and processes in place to make sure you can only access Pure if you are working on Pure, and furthermore, you also need to have a reason to access. You cannot just, you're not allowed to just go in and access a Pure just because, oh, let's see what's going on in this Pure instance, right? And finally, we have a security incident response plan. So if something happens, then we have a whole process of how to react, how to make sure someone is doing communication with you guys if that is necessary. Someone is looking at preventing any further issues to happen and then fixing the issues. So one of the things we have is that we have a dedicated information security organization. So that's ISDP. That is actually for entire Elsevier. And they are reporting directly into the CTO of Elsevier. So they are focusing, their whole purpose is to focus on making everything Elsevier does as secure as possible. And they have scannings and tooling in place to make sure that we adhere to that. So we don't have a say in, oh, we don't want to prioritize that, we have this important feature instead. They are pushing us constantly. And we are, of course, and they are also very proactive, that we need, oh, we can see this library is soon going to be end of life. We are going to make sure that we update that. And that is both on the application, so Pure itself, but also on the infrastructure. All the services running on the servers, we are updating them every month to make sure that everything is updated and compliant. And also, as you probably know, we are ISO 27001 certified, and there are even more processes to make sure that we are, that is actually also some things that we have processes, that they make sure we have processes in place to control who have access, what are we doing regarding security and stuff like that. And the ISDP, that was external to us, but internal within Elsevier, where this ISO here, there we are being audited by external auditors. So they make sure that we do everything which is needed. Yes, finally, or not finally, but another thing where it can be a difficult thing for your team to manage Pure, that is whenever we are making changes to Pure. Because of what I just said, then we need to update Java version, Tomcat version, Postgres version, to make sure that we are running on the new and compliant versions of that. That needs to be communicated to you guys, and you need to update your infrastructure to follow that, to be able to run Pure and be as secure as possible. We are taking care of that. We are also going to getting Cloudflare for the entire Pure. And we also have some self-service we are working on. I have that on the next slide. And we are also starting to add cloud-only features. For example, we added antivirus scanning some time ago. You can actually do that on-prem, but then you need, again, to do a lot of work yourself, where if you're cloud hosting, that is just what you get. Similar to the export to Word service we are just about to launch, that will be a cloud-only service. We are still looking into whether or how we can make that available to on-premise customers, but it will be a service where you need to accept that some data, but only what you're actually exporting to the Word, is being sent to the cloud, but not stored or anything like that. More details on that when it becomes available to you. Yeah, the more customers we have on cloud native, the more things we can do to optimize towards that, and we can make a faster turnaround. And as I said, we also want to focus on the feature toggles, so you opt in when you want those new features. So you're in control, so that's the self-service. That's actually the DevOps team who's working on that. So that could be things. So some of this is a transition until we are truly cloud native, because some of these are not needed once we are truly cloud native. But so that could be restarting of Pure right now. If you want to enable, or if you need to enable or disable a module, you need to restart Pure for that to take effect. You can do that yourself. If you want to copy your data from production to staging to try out these new features, you can do that yourself. If you want to update the URL or certificate, for example, regarding authentication, you can do that yourself. And maybe even deploy a new version of Pure and create backups and stuff like that. All of these are not certain that we're going to do, but that's some of the things we want to do. And it's actually popular, like Pat just showed this morning. We have 80% of all our customers who are actually hosted by us. And we are slowly moving more and more customers towards cloud hosting. And the process is almost automated. I'm having some slides on that further along. Some of the things we're doing so far is that the first thing we need to do is to have everyone to be cloud hosted, because that's where we really can start to optimize our processes internally. And one of the steps we have done so far, that is to say, okay, we want to reduce the operating systems, so only hosting on Linux, the authentication mechanisms, focusing on SAML2 based authentication, and then the databases to focus on Postgres only, because then we can make optimizations towards Postgres, and we only need to test and maintain that, because it takes a lot of development effort to make sure that it works equally as good in all of these different scenarios. So we want to reduce the scope to make a better experience to you guys. And we are also going to deprecate database synchronizations as in June 2026, so there are quite some time to it. So even though you are moving to cloud hosting, you can still have database synchronizations, but because that's not the recommended way of doing stuff, especially not when you're cloud hosted, because then you need a connection from cloud to your database. We have, of course, solutions to that. And then this one here, which says mandatory cloud services in H1, I think we have changed that a little bit. It also, you might have noticed in the release notes that it also says that in the headline. Then if you read further down, it actually says that we are considering it. So yeah, more updates to come on exactly what we're going to do there. Right now, everyone needs to migrate to SAML2 based or Elsevier login instead of whatever you have right now. So for example, if you are already onboarded on ID Plus on other Elsevier products, you could configure Pure to use that instead, because then it will provide a more seamless experience for your users. And actually most SSO providers, they already support SAML 2. So that means that it's not like...
Sorry, just people don't know what ID Plus is. So all of Elsevier's products, whether you're an editor and you're logging into a system, submit a paper, especially if you're a researcher, if you're an editor of a journal, if you've access to any of our platforms, that's basically what that is. It's kind of like your Google ID, but for things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was just to rephrase what Pat was saying is that it's a system Elsevier already have, which you will be using to access other systems. So as I was saying, your SSO, more or less, I can more or less guarantee you that it already supports SAML 2, at least if you have, as you should, remember to update it to one of the later versions because of security. And then you just need to reconfigure Pure and try it out in your staging environment first. It would be a shame to configure something and then none of your people can log in. So test that out in staging first. So you're probably wondering, are we actually using SAML 2 or not? So here is an example of how you can actually check that. So at the administrator, then you go to security, admin, then it says something. Click, yes, I know what I'm doing. Let's just pretend we do that and then just go in because we're not doing anything, we're just checking here, right? Then you can see all of the different authentication mechanisms supported in Pure. And I've tried to illustrate here some of them which are not supported, but it's the green, it's not green in your Pure, that's only for illustration purposes, of course. That's the SAML 2 based. That is the one you want to have configured. Another thing, the Postgres migration, we pushed that deadline to October next year because that is a bigger impact for you guys. However, we actually have tooling to help you. Of course, ideally, we want you to take the opportunity to then move to cloud hosting, but you can also continue having it run yourself because Postgres is actually, the license is free, so you can install it. It's easy to maintain, and we have tooling available to convert from whatever, it's Oracle or SQL Server you're running now, so you can convert your data from that into Postgres. It's the exact same tool we're using when we are converting you from on-prem to cloud hosting. And yeah, we have already planned some optimization towards Postgres, so everything runs faster. An important thing to mention here, even though we say we are deprecating the other databases, if you have synchronizations, so that, for example, personalization synchronizations against the database, that will still work, even though that's Postgres or Oracle. But that was the thing I mentioned. That is going to be deprecated far in the future, so you have time to switch, because that was 2026, so more than 2 years from now. And as I said, it is supported in cloud hosting, but we recommend XML-based. So, what database are you running? You can actually also check that in Pure. If you click on the administrator and scroll all the way to the bottom, where you're probably never looking, because why should you? There, the bottom line actually tells you what database you're running. And if you're running Postgres, make sure that you're running 14 or later, because before that, they are also end of life. So make sure to update your software. And you can actually also see what customer deployment you're actually running. It's not really that interesting to you guys, but I actually have some details on that later, because that is also going to change. But that should be seamless to you guys. But you can check here, if you are on Cost UKCC, you are on what we call the common customer. So that is all our new customers get that one. After taking this slide, or taking this screenshot, I also realized we should probably convert this into some more human readable things and not some, this is what the packages is called within the code. And yeah, let's face it, you don't really care, right? You just need to know what am I running. Regarding synchronizations, I said a couple times, database synchronizations are going to be deprecated in June 2026. We are going to continue support XML-based, and that is also the recommended way to synchronize data into Pure. You can do use the API right now, and it is possible to, so you can log fields just like you have with the normal synchronization. But the thing with API-based synchronizations is that then all the complexity is now in your end. You need to manage everything. But it of course also gives you more control over when what is happening and what is happening. But XML-based, there you basically just, this is our data, make sure things are updated in Pure. Another part about, you might be wondering about when you're moving to cloud hosted, that is APIs and integrations with Pure, how is it going to work? We actually right now have all our editorial and master data content types in the current web service, so that means you can get all data out of Pure. All of the same content types are supported through either sync or bulk import, so you can get all data into Pure. And we are then, Chiara mentioned that yesterday in the roadmap session, we are slowly adding more and more content types to the Write API. So in the future, that is where you should be going, and that's where you have the most flexibility if you want data in and out of Pure. And as I said, still recommend to use XML for sync. We also have a public-facing documentation on the changes endpoint. That is actually how you can listen for changes in Pure if you want to keep another system in sync. And I would of course like to know if you are missing some functionality right now in regards to ways to get data out or in of Pure through the current web service and bulk imports, so we can make sure that we add those capabilities to the Write API. Good.
Call the listener, where you can listen for changes in the Pure and then subscribe.
Yeah, that's the changes endpoint.
Changes endpoint.
Yeah, so it's yeah, so and it's not available in the Write API yet, but you can easily use the old to just listen for changes. But one of the things we want to add in the new is also to be able to filter down to if you only want to keep a certain content type in sync. So we are only interested in, let's say, equipment. Then you only listen for equipment changes, and then you're being informed whenever a new content is created or modified. Good. So this is a little bit about the actual migration process. So if you decide to move, or when you decide to move to hosted, then you will have a implementation manager associated, and they will help you, so you will not be alone. And here I'm going to go through some of the steps. There will be wiki, there will be meetings with them and follow-ups. But at a high level, what is happening is we'll take a copy of your data, setting up an instance in Amazon, and then you want to test that everything works as expected in the new environment. Later you'll do.
We should use Google Data because EU laws and GDPR, so we cannot push the data in USA.
Yeah, so
that's a big thing, you know. And I love to use the word farm because it's not you know, a cloud. So why should I put my cow to that farm there? You know, that's the thing, you know.
Yeah. So first and foremost, we are of course 100% compliant with GDPR, and our Pure instances are serviced through different regions of Amazon. So all the European customers, they are only being hosted in Ireland, so within the EU. So there shouldn't be any concerns regarding that, and you will not be sending any data outside of that. Both the Pure and the portal are in the EU region. And as I said earlier, the data between the different Pures, they are completely isolated. So you cannot get access from through one Pure to another Pure. Yeah.
I have another question over here.
Thank you very much. I want to pick up on that because our university is very concerned with Amazon Web Services because they answer to American law, independent on where the data is actually stored. That, you know, is a problem, or at least we see it as a problem. So we would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand your concern. So we, of course, have agreements together with Amazon. So there is, just like you together with us are going to sign, if you already have a portal, you should probably already have a DPA, so data process agreement. We also have that with Amazon, so they cannot, and they are not allowed to access our data, right? And as I said, we cannot even access it. You can access it. The data is stored on encrypted disk, and the databases are encrypted. So Amazon cannot get access to that data. And that is part of the agreement we have specifically with them. Not specific, but yeah, with Amazon.
I think this morning news came out that Amazon is going to create a completely EU section of the cloud with only EU staff and nothing American in it anymore. So maybe it's something to be able to migrate to there at some point in the future.
Yeah. So that definitely something we need to look into, and that could probably be something which could help you guys being more calm about it. But also, I just want to reiterate, Amazon is just providing a service of servers to us. We are managing everything within it. Amazon is not managing anything within our clusters. So we are in full control, and that's also why we have an entire team doing nothing but managing those servers. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And yeah, then we'll do the actual migration. That takes 1 to 2 days typically. Post-migration, we'll make sure that everything works as expected, making sure, yeah, having all our normal monitoring and stuff like that, like we have on all other hosted environments, and then you'll remove your local on-premise installations. A little bit more details. So, as I said, we are using something called PVA Data Exporter. So that is a tool made to be able to export the data from your database into a database agnostic format. So that is why we can convert it from Oracle or SQL Server into Postgres. And it's the same thing you will be using if you want to stay on-premise, but change to Postgres. And yeah, we have done it a lot of time with a lot of different customers. So it's a proven process. It works, and it's mostly automated. Yeah, I'll not go into too much details because I think otherwise I'll not be able to catch all of my things. But the implementation manager will of course guide you. But one of the most important things is of course to check any of your integrations either in or out of Pure, because some of those might have been set up with IP restrictions or something like that. And when you're in a cloud, you will be getting a new IP. So check all of these things before you actually do the switch to the final Pure instance. And of course, test whatever you normally would test as part of an upgrade to Pure to make sure that it actually works. Yes? And also some details about making sure that your URL is updated, if you have any redirects, that they are being updated and stuff like that. So it's seamless to the customers. We of course recommend to have the same public facing URL as you have now when you're cloud hosted. So any of your customers who have any bookmarks, especially on the Pure portal, because that can be anyone in the world, right? They should continue working because you want to use the same URL, and we of course support that, and everything should be the same. Just schedule some of the timelines for doing that. So that is the actual move. So you can see here, the Pure backend is stopped, and that is to make sure that no people access the Pure to do changes, because that change will then be lost. And if you have a Pure portal, that keeps running, keeps working. Don't worry about that. Then database and files are exported. The new hosted Pure is being made available, and all the data is being loaded in, and redirection is set up. The portal will update to if there is any changes. Once that has happened, then, as I said, the old portal will be stopped. The new one will be set up so we can switch over. Good. And now some questions for Thiago, because he's actually one of the customers who have been trying or have been migrated to hosted. So can you tell a little bit about why you moved, what your experience was, and if you had any issues as part of the move?
Well, hello everyone. My name is Thiago from Nova University in Lisbon. So first of all, I was listening to your presentation and I was remembering all the steps. And obviously at the beginning, in 2015, when we implemented, we had obviously some worries about cloud. So we went for an on-premise solution, and we went there and we stayed for 4 years. But the reality, in fact, it wasn't a very good experience in my case as the administrator, because it was a constant worry. My IT isn't, as Henrik mentioned, fully focused and dedicated on Pure. They have a lot of other things to worry about. And so when we had issues, and very specific examples, when the light went out, it happened twice. The generator came up, but the Pure went down. So they weren't immediately ready. They had other things to do. So the system was down for a few hours, when in the case of the cloud, it never went down. So, and obviously if it does go down, there is a team entirely dedicated and 100%. So that was a specific example. And another thing was the updates or the database dumps. When we needed dumps to go to the test server, they were never entirely correct. There were always some small things, because the structure of Pure is complex, and the team wasn't fully aware of the database structure. So basically what I'm trying to say is that for a university like us, with limited IT resources, not in terms of technical infrastructure resources, but software developers that really know the structure of the database, going to the cloud is much simpler. So that was the thing that motivated us to go to the cloud. In terms of the implementation itself, it was quite smooth, with a clear schedule that allowed me to warn my IT what was going to happen in every single step. There was a small issue with Orchid, not with Pure, but Orchid had a few issues that week, which delayed the process a little bit, but the team was completely 100% dedicated on that, and it went quite smoothly after the problems were solved. And I think that was the main driver to go to the cloud. So the issues with the fact that my IT wasn't fully dedicated. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe one thing I just thought of when you were talking about the dedicated team we have, that is a Pure team. There are right now 5 individuals and a team lead managing that team. But Elsevier actually also have something they called OCC. I cannot remember what it stands for, but it's basically
Offshore Command Center.
Offshore Command Center. So basically it is that a lot of the cases, or if Pure has an occasional crash, they are able to go in and get Pure started. So they have a lot of operations they can do, and they are taking care of everything outside of the traditional office hours, and they can manage 99, close to 100% of everything. So even outside office hours, they can do that, and if they cannot fix it, then they will escalate it to the team, and then they will take care of it. So yeah, so you're in good hands. I actually have an additional question. So back to my poll, there were the standard or dedicated. So which option did you choose, and why?
So we went for dedicated, which not the standard, for one very obvious reason. We have a policy in line at Nova, so we have a structure of mandatory and non-mandatory tasks in Pure, and sometimes the updates impact that policy, and we need to prepare with more time. So we want the freedom to be able to update when we want. And for me, the dedicated solution is perfect, because it's basically a catered solution, and it's a customizable solution where I can exactly know what is coming. I can prepare the community in terms of the policy, if the policy needs changes, if we need to change the organizational structure in any way, and then launch the new version when we want. For us, the standard would be a problem, because we do have a very slow process in terms of policy. I think you all know, in terms of the directorate, the rector, the vice rectors, the decisions take time, and so we prefer the dedicated solution.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay,
yeah,
that's all.
I think that's all my. Yeah.
Question for Thiago.
How many times did you use the option to postpone since you went? Sure.
It's coming.
One coming. Who was this?
Hi, Gert-Jan, University Twente. How many times since you went to the cloud did you use the option to postpone the update
Okay.
because of the reason you mentioned?
Yeah, constantly. I think it's it's easier to explain that we moved to the cloud in 2019, 2020, and since then we're always a bit lagging, a bit behind. I've strictly used the advice from Preston Sorensen, which was our implementation manager. He told us to wait always a few months just to see how the implementation goes, and also for us to prepare. So to give you an example, we're still on 526.3 because moving to 527 will have a few implications in our policy document, and I've been preparing my teams, my editors, so we do lag behind a bit, but obviously we try to keep up with the functionalities that are also useful for us with the new versions, but we do have to lag behind a bit, so it has not been a problem for us.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Maybe it's more for sales, but could you give us some numbers on how many is on standard and how many is on dedicated? Because that's exactly my worry, that we are going to change for the standard solutions because we don't have the money to go to the dedicated. So actually we are going to pay more for a not so good solution, I think. So
Yeah. So I don't have the numbers on top of my head, but I can definitely find it to you and get back to you. No,
It's the other way around. So
Yeah.
the majority of people are on standard.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of schools who just have simple needs. They just simply report, have a portal that they're not synchronizing, so the bulk is standard.
I think we have a comment from Nick over here on that.
So I have experience with 2 cloud installations, both on standard, and I'm really happy with that because actually it's a lot cheaper. I can't say any amounts, but and also I have a kind of reverse logic on postponing with the advanced installation because if you start asking people, what do you think of this functionality? Do you want to test it? You get 10,000 opinions. And with the standard installation, you can just say, well, it's a cloud application. It just rolls out a functionality. This is what you get. And those 2 are really, and it's also not, we don't have any negative experience with, I was also all of the opinion that we will wait for the .1 update so that we don't run into any major issues. And basically, well, I have to knock on wood here, but we didn't really run into any of those issues at both institutions where we were on the cloud. So it's just to kind of, maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think the standard installation is working fine, I guess.
And I would just like to say towards Don's point, like it's our job to make sure we don't have bugs in the first version. And it's our job to make sure that, and we're working towards this with like feature flags. So we're working towards a future where we can be more elegant in introducing features that, you know, the feature's there, but it's turned off until you want to turn it on so that you can take the version, but then take the feature later. That's kind of the direction we're heading, but we're not, you know, to be honest, we're not there in every aspect and every
I
change.
have another question over here from, will you answer
Yeah,
that first?
just one comment to your question. I totally agree with you. It would be easier to say to people, well, this is the software is moving, so you have to move too. But the problem is the policies and the mandatory policies we have in line. Because, for example, we have 2 connectors, one with ORCID, another one with DSpace at the national level. And our DSpace connector communicates with a very old version of DSpace. And so we really do have to be careful because if we move too fast, in that case, we might break the connector. And that in terms of political reasons at Nova, that would be a deal breaker for the software. So we really need to wait a bit. So this dedicated solution is more like a transitional option, in my view, in terms of the policy at Nova. I would like to aim for the standard solution, but we still need to wait a bit.
Okay, another comment here, Edinburgh.
Thanks, Henrik. I think just to comment on and to ask as well, because we are considering moving to hosting as well, we're under negotiation at the moment, but we're thinking of going to the dedicated solution. And our concern is really with the data model changes and logic changes for open access compliance, which over the last 5 years that I've been in the university, there've been maybe 4 occurrences of that. And leading up to the REF 2021 submission, there was a change to the data model for REF 2 when it was associated to people rather than research outputs. So we need time to kind of make sure that we handle those change. Now, when you're talking about features being configurable, great, but for logic changes and data model changes, I take it those are not configurable and we have to take it when it gets upgraded? Or will that be part of the new self-service that you're developing so that we can choose when to deploy that change?
Yeah, thank you. So you're right. Some model changes we cannot control through feature flags. But for example, one of the latest things we added, where we added more images on more content types, and we added the copyright options. That is actually something where you can say, okay, do I want it on all of the content types who didn't have it before? And then also, do I want the copyright check mark, right? So that is an example of an expansion to the model where you then control, okay, do we want that yet? Or do we want to wait, or do we don't want it at all? And regarding the integrations, because that is of course a big concern, and I totally get that. So, and that is also one of the reasons why in the old web service we have made sure that the 5.24 version of the API is now stable. So that means that you can update without having to change any of your existing integrations with the web service. Similarly, the new Pure API, that is also considered stable now and backwards compatible. So that means that when we expand, for example, when we are adding images and stuff like that, we make sure that what you already have keeps working. We are not changing that format. Of course, you'll need to make updates to be able to make use of the things we are adding, right? But we are making sure that the integrations you have keeps working. For DSpace, we updated recently to support DSpace 7, but we actually still have the support for the old ones. And I don't know what the concrete plans are, but at some point, I guess we are going to drop them. But I would highly recommend you to move to 7 because of all the security updates to that, to make sure you are compliant and not vulnerable.
Okay, we have another comment over here.
So I was wondering if it's also possible to make the scalability more modular, because I noticed with the old API that in Tomcat it was a different application next to the client. And I'm now working with the new API to get a lot of data out for our BI project. And at some point I thought, well, maybe I can get more CPU or memory toward only the API and make it faster if that's possible. So are you thinking about things like that for the customer?
Yeah, because, and I think I have a slide on that later actually, because one of the things we are looking into, I think I mentioned the reporting, is that we are looking into splitting, separating Pure into smaller parts and then adding more dedicated resources to that so we can scale it. Because it is indeed some of those heavy hitting, either API, some of the jobs running or the reporting, which can really impact the performance of Pure. And that is of course what we want to reduce. So it shouldn't impact the normal use just because someone is creating some crazy reports or harvesting a lot of data, writing a lot of data with the API. And one of the things is that before we can really make the big change, we need ideally all of our customers unhosted because it's less things we need to maintain.
Henrik, I think you can continue with your slides if you have more.
Yeah.
Time is pressing.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I'll fortunately enough, I also have a part in the roadmap sessions where there's also something about the cloud move. So I'll probably also go into some of those in here because I don't think I can manage the last slides in 5 minutes. But some great questions for all of you, and hopefully I answered satisfactory enough. Otherwise, please come and ask me.
Like timelines for deprecation is probably one of the most.
Yeah. So I'll try to get that, and that is also in the roadmap session. So, And yes, exactly, this one actually covers the thing I just talked about, or you questioned, Nick, about is that we want to break it into more different parts. So one of the things is the reporting module, so it can so we can have an optimized data structure towards being able to report and not everything else you can do in Pure. Another thing about splitting these things is that we can then make updates to that part of it. Actually, right now, the Pure portal is separate. So that is a separate application, and that actually works independently of your Pure version. However, there's of course some things where you need to have a certain version of Pure to be able to have that working in the Pure portal. But the Pure portal always runs on the latest version. Everyone has that. And most of the times we are releasing the Pure portal at the same time as we are releasing the standard version of Pure. But sometimes we are actually updating, especially when it's if there are some security issues, because then we can deploy that much faster. And yeah, to continue on that, so we separate into different parts of Pure. Kiara also have something on the roadmap about building the integration platform. That is an example of something we want to separate out of Pure, so we can more fastly react to all the 30 plus integrations we have with external sources. Sometimes they change the API, sometimes they are kindly enough to inform us, other times we notice when it's no longer working. That is an example where we can then more quickly adapt to that and then just update that part of Pure. So here is the big thing. The most important parts are of course the red parts. The green parts are primarily some of the things we are doing internally to make sure this works. So in the release notes for the 528, we announced that we are going to deprecate database synchronizations. But because this is a big impact for you guys, that's why we said it now, because you can actually see it's, what it says, June 2026, so it's in 2.5 years, if I can calculate it properly. So you have time to adapt. Similarly, the non-SAML authentication, they're dropping, non-Linux is being dropped, that you have also been noticed about way in advance. And then later the SQL, I also touched upon that. So one of the things we are going to do, that is then actually it says on-premise integrations. It shouldn't say on-premise integrations. It's like all of the import sources that we are going to move them. I don't know exactly if that is the date, but we are going to move them along. Another thing is that so here we're also collapsing some of the bases, so all of you will be running on the same base, the same model, the same deploy, and quickly. Why is that important? Because right now we actually started in 2018 to build so that was the one called COS UKCC, that is a common model. But we still actually have 125 unique customer builds. And you more or less have the same functionality, so you shouldn't really be impacted by that. But one of the things is we are looking at moving the data models. There are some examples with student project and thesis, person expertise, and principal investigator. Because the left-hand side, that is what we have now. The right-hand side is a mixture of the future and what we want to go to. So right now, it actually takes us more than 12 hours to build all of the different distributions to Pure. So that means we cannot fix a thing and install it in Pure at the same day because of that. When we have one code base, we can do it in 30 minutes, then we can deploy it. In the separate deployables, so for example, the integration service, then we can do that in, let's say, maybe 5 minutes. And when we are truly cloud native, we can do updates without any downtime for you guys. So you won't even notice that you have been updated. But now, whatever critical bug or security issue was now fixed. So I have a few other slides, but I think I'll stop them or skip them. But yeah, please move to hosted. So
I have a quick comment. I'm from the implementation team. So if you want to hear more about the process of moving, we're in the office hours just next door. So just drop in and we can talk about more in detail how the move actually happens, what the steps are. Thanks.